Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a special episode of the X Button, a non-numbered episode. As I kind of teased in the normal episode that went live this week, season 3, episode 39. Um, this episode is basically the recording that I had originally planned to splice in the middle of this week's episode, but because my normal recording with Paul went for like close to an hour and 30, and then what I recorded with my buddies from Season Gaming went for like almost an hour and 30. Instead of making a 3-hour beast, I decided, yeah, this could be its own episode that will fully highlight them. That's kind of like been my plan, that since I've been working for Season Gaming almost close to a year, I kind of wanted to highlight some of the people that work there because I like them so much, and I would like for the world to know more about them beyond like just our Season Gaming circle and social media circles. So everything that I recorded for that episode is gonna be shown right now. So I hope you enjoy it. This episode, it's kind of sort of interview, so you all learn kind of their history with Season Gaming, what their favorite games of all time are, 5 special games that means a lot for them, and also the ones that I mentioned. And hopefully I can bring in more people from Season Gaming in to also have similarly fun conversations, and I can have both my friends here in Season Gaming, Zack and Eric, back for more fun stuff in the future. So enjoy the segment that was originally recorded for episode 39. And as promised in the normal episode, I said I was going to have special guests for this week's episode of the X Button, and here they are, 2 of my buddies from Season Gaming, Zack Bateman and Eric Bezanson. You can say
Bezanson.
it. Bezanson, okay, almost got it. I only know he was Eric,
Hey,
and then
I've heard
then
a lot
worse. so yeah, welcome Zack, welcome Eric to the show.
Hello.
Hello, thanks for the invite. I
Yeah,
apologize
thanks for
in
inviting
advance
us.
for my horsey voice. It's really messed up from the old daycare plague, but I'm going to try to push through.
Yeah.
Mine's a little nasally too, the kindergarten plague for me.
Yeah. So kind of like we were talking before we started recording. Yeah, I'm like the only one in Season Gaming that's basically the kid, right? I feel like, because I just turned 30. I think you're 30, 31, right? Zack,
I'm
what time we're talking?
33.
Yeah, so it's kind of like what I like about Season Gaming is kind of like, because I know it's like people with like history, experience, that have like a good perspective of what the industry is. Kind of like, I want to call it boomer, because I feel like that would be like making it feel like you're too
Ains
old.
is a boomer.
Ains would be the boomer there, but it's kind of like I feel like it's always good to have like good perspective of how long we've all been gaming, and and when we started gaming, instead of the people that just started with their Fortnites and all of that they don't know shit. Like, if we're perfectly honest, or like what makes gaming great outside of like some of the crap that's been happening. But yeah, so we've been wanting to like have people from Season Gaming, just because I've always mentioned it a lot. I joined late last year in November. Actually, I joined in thanks to your review, Zack, of Resident Evil: The Shadows of Rose.
Oh,
Because
that was my first review.
which is it's so interesting, because I had to just finish that DLC, and I was like, I didn't see many people review it, and you know how you put it in the Twitter/X search of like who's reviewing, and I saw that you put yours, and Ains promoted it, and then I just commented, be like, man, that was a really good review. And then he mentioned, it was like, yeah, that is Zack's first review, and I was like, oh, cool. I have written before, like I wonder if I could join in, and lo and behold, I'm here.
That's awesome.
So that was gonna be like my first question, like when have you guys, like, how long have you been like in quote unquote game coverage, and also when did you join Season Gaming? So obviously with Zack, now I learned that you joined around that time last year, October.
Well,
Or did you join before?
I joined a little bit before. That was just my first review. I wrote like a couple of opinion pieces. So I served in the Marine Corps for like 5 years, and then I started going to college. And the way I found Season Gaming is I actually started interacting with Ains on Twitter, or Zitter, as I like to call it, over the Witcher stuff, because I'm a huge Witcher fan. I love The Witcher. And from there, I started finding out what I wanted to study in college with my veterans benefits. And I decided to go for journalism, broadcasting, graphic design, kind of a broad selection of skills that I could try and like work with stuff that I'm really passionate about, because I've always been really passionate about video games. And yeah, I started there. My first article, it's why aren't you playing Elden Ring? And that was my first From Software game, actually. And I still go back and read through it just to see like how much I've grown. But I want to say I started with Season Gaming for my internship for my degree. I'm set to graduate like next semester. I've been going to school for like three years now, so I'm graduating like a year early. It's been interesting, but my favorite part's definitely been writing for Season Gaming.
Awesome. How about you, Eric?
Yeah, it's a similar story. Like I kind of ran into Ains on, back then it actually was Twitter. And I did have my own kind of podcast that I was just doing for fun, something I kind of just spun up during the pandemic. And it was around the time that Halo Infinite was coming out, and I was in the Discord, and I can't even remember exactly how it went down, but for some reason he let me write like kind of a guest article on the website. It was the top 25 games for the original Xbox.
Ooh, nice.
First article. And then there was like someone had backed out of I think it might have been Randalthor or Jez or someone like that had backed out of doing a panel for Halo Infinite, and so like they were scrambling to kind of get a person to fill in, and I don't know why, but he asked me, and then I was on, all of a sudden I'm on a panel with like some pretty big names in YouTube or in YouTube land, and Ains and a lot of those guys. And yeah, before I knew it, like a month later, I had a code for Rainbow Six Extraction, reviewing that, which was my first review. And it's kind of, I kind of haven't really done much of the podcast and stuff like that recently. Season Gaming is such a great community, and Ains is such a great, he's really good at just kind of like picking people up and inspiring them to kind of create and giving them a platform to kind of write on and have their voices heard and stuff like that, which is like really, really cool. And so I haven't done a lot of content creation outside of Season Gaming, but I've always been sticking to that because it's such a, like I said, it's such a great community, such a great group of people there. And like you were talking about earlier, there's such a great kind of mix of opinions. Anyone who, like, I personally, if I was writing for Season Game or just like kind of in the gamer sphere, like 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more, like early 20s, I was kind of a little bit of a fanboy for Xbox, but I've kind of matured now. I'm more cultured, and I have all the consoles and tons of games for everything. I love all the gaming, and I feel like a lot of people are kind of in the right headspace at Season Gaming to kind of approach things the right way and kind of look at games for what they are. And it's there's there's no BS or anything like that. It's such a good place to be.
Oh yeah, that 100% agree.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that too. Like, I just love, like, I hate console warring, especially now, because I used to also be that kid for the PlayStation side in the PS3 era. Obviously, not a good time to be in that side, especially around the times of like the PSN outage and all of that. But it was like, so it was very quickly to realize that why do we have to be warring about like these machines when there's can be great games like everywhere, and like obviously, like, it can be sometimes cost prohibitive for some people, and I understand that, but like, really, like, the best way to like really appreciate this medium is being able to experience it all instead of trying to stay in the lane of something. Which, yes, it can be fun for someone to like specialize in like one specific platform, because then it becomes like knowledgeable, kind of like over at the Sacred Symbols podcast that is very like PlayStation centric. Though I also get very frustrated at sometimes how the main host there gets too, let's just say, too laser focused on not wanting to like branch out. It makes it feel like, man, there's like so much stuff that you're refusing to like experience, and that's kind of like the beauty that is gaming. And inadvertently, then sometimes people say they're fanboys, and I'm like, no, like, that's not what's fun, especially right now that I feel this console generation warring has gotten so bad. Like, it's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting, and I'm glad that we all push back. Like, over at Season Gaming, like, we all clown partisans in both sides, and we all just kind of like roll our eyes and just move on with our lives, because we like to be adults in the room in a way. So
that's one of my favorite things about Season Gaming is really like, I actually feel like we're our own like group. Like, we're there to uplift each other and like support your opinion, even if we disagree with it. I mean, we'll poke fun at like Steve, even though he hates Elden Ring. Like, he absolutely, like, he doesn't like it. Like, I mean, I've clowned on him, Eric's clowned on him, Ains has clowned on him. Like, that's a thing. But all of us love Steve. Like all of us have validated, like said,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, it's okay to think that way. You know what I mean? And that's one of my favorite things about the kind of group that Ains has cultivated with Season Gaming is that it's just a lot of like free thinking individuals that are like,
Mhm.
yeah, it's cool that you think that way. Like I disagree for this reason, but yeah, you know, like it's just very validating, very positive. It's awesome.
Yeah, I just love knowing that we can exactly express ourselves like how we think about a specific game, and they empower us to be like, "That we're totally support you. You can post. That's how you feel about this game, even if I don't personally feel like that." Kind of like how Ains was with God of War Ragnarok last year, that he supported Steve giving it a high score, even though Ains really doesn't really like that game, and I really like that because healthy disagreement is exactly what we need, and I love that's what Season Gaming really pushes for, and I have been glad that to be able to join and be part of all of you guys, like, and what we've been doing. It's so funny, we all joined the same, kind of like officially joined the same year in 2022.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
Ah.
I was, pretty much. I was at like tail end of 2021, but
Mhm.
I wasn't really writing a lot until 2022. But yeah, I think what Ains tries to do, I don't know if it's a conscious decision or not, but if you notice, anytime like he tweets out a review or something, like one of the
Mhm.
first things that's tagged in the review is the author, and he
Mhm.
really wants it to be like Alex's review of X game, not like
Mhm.
if you look at like IGN, like yes, the author's name is there, but it's kind of
Yeah.
viewed as this big giant corporation's
And never in
opinion,
a tweet,
not a
and
person.
you never see it in the tweet because just here's IGN's official review, and you only see who wrote it until you click in, and Ains really makes
Yeah.
it personal, and that really helps us because it's like that's how you know we're being supported, because he
Yeah.
really wants us to grow with that. So
Exactly.
awesome. So you guys came in 2022. Now let's move to what have you guys been playing recently. So I already kind of talked in the main in my main in what I recorded already for the show. I have been playing Assassin's Creed Mirage. And before I say like my things about it, I kind of want to hear what you guys have been playing.
So I am still on Lies of P and playing Texas Chainsaw because that's my favorite multiplayer game right now since Evil Dead kind of got discontinued. I am still working on Dark Souls 3 too. I'm always just kind of playing whatever I feel like playing in the moment. But that's really all I've been playing lately is just Texas Chainsaw and Souls Likes or Soulsborne.
Yeah, and by what to interject there, this is the year you've been like full on in the Souls likes, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. So I started with Elden Ring in 2022. Like I said, that was my first article. So why aren't you playing Elden Ring? If you want to get some laughs and see like the article that all of the writers and even like other contributors were like, hey, like here's some advice. Like even Eric was like, hey, think about this when you're writing. Like that that's where I go to like see my like sense of growth. But I've been going through all of From Software's stuff. I am currently on Dark Souls 3. I've played through Bloodborne, Sekiro. Sekiro's the hardest game I've ever played in my life
yeah.
and beaten.
It broke me. I couldn't. It totally broke me.
It was very difficult, but I am very proud that I completed it. And so far, like I've always been kind of a horror guy, so I love like the dark, macabre, grotesque, like really, really fucked up stuff. So Dark Souls has kind of been vibing with me a little bit more than like Elden Ring, just because Elden Ring I feel like it's very polished, it's very bright, but I
Bright.
love like that dark fantasy side of things. But yeah, I've played through just about all of them. I have like a couple bosses left on Dark Souls 2 because I've been playing it with my friend in co-op, but I'm pretty much to the point that I could just walk to the end.
Yeah. Have you beaten the dancer? The dancer of the Boreal in Dark Souls 3, the dancer of the Borealis. Okay. That was the one that almost drove me to rage quit, because I kind of also went on a Souls binge last year, but that was last year after we finished Elden Ring, because I was like, oh, I finally got it. And that's when I beat the first Dark Souls. That's when I beat Dark Souls 3 also. And replayed Bloodborne because that was one of the first one that I beat like forever ago, but it took me like a year to beat Bloodborne. It was like started in 2015, and in December 2016 I finally beat it. But I still like didn't quite get it until like Elden Ring. But what stopped my binge was Dark Souls 2. I hate Dark Souls 2, like to the bottom of my being. Like, it's really because the movement, that Dark Souls 2 feels so different from like 1 and 3. Obviously, you can tell that it was not Miyazaki that made that game, but it was like understanding that it was like diagonal movement was wrong, that you needed to like pump stats into like iframes and all of that. I was like, this is stupid. Why do I have to grind for like iframes for it? Because I became a dodger. I used to be like, wanted to be like, oh, I'm just gonna block, but then my buddy Paul, he was like, no, try to do dodging. Dodging's the way. Dodging's the way. And trying to do dodging until like broke, man. I was like, no, I can't do this. That's what stopped me. So
see, like I too have absolutely despised Dark Souls 2, but in every Souls game, I always end up finding like one boss that I love. And the one boss in Dark Souls 2 that actually probably drove me almost into like causing me to go bald because I'm ripping out my own hair was Fume Knight. And eventually I just sat down and like memorized all of his shit. And I think like that entire DLC was just very rage worthy. And like when I got to Fume Knight, I was like, okay, finally I'm at the end of the boss. And then I get to the boss and it's like the hardest fucking boss.
So what about fight the Nameless King in Dark Souls 3 yet? Either of you?
Yeah, I did. I
can only do all of Dark Souls.
Yeah, best visuals, like be fighting him in the clouds, and when he just goes in with like the dragon, so cool. I could only get the first phase, second phase, like always destroyed me. And by that point, I was like, on thin ice with like my patience at that point. But man, it was a cool boss.
Yeah, that's my favorite boss in the whole franchise. I think it's optional though. I don't think it's on the main path. So make sure you find that guy, Zach.
Mine right now is Artorias. I am like obsessed with Artorias. I have an Artorias Dark Souls hoodie. Like Artorias is my shit. I've like gone over all of his lore and everything. I think he's the coolest Dark Souls character ever. And like I said, like I know I love Dark Souls 3. It doesn't support cloud saves on Steam, and I play it on my Steam Deck because I have like 4 hours of free time at school, so I'll just whip out my Steam Deck if like I have too much like caffeine in my system to take a nap. So I'll just sit in like the veterans lounge playing Dark Souls on my Steam Deck. And I think I'm right before the dancer, if I remember right.
Yeah, the dancer is like the coolest thing about that boss is that is the only boss whose movement is off sync from the music. I had this friend that I play Destiny with. He's like a soul savant, and he was the first one that really brought that to mind. He was like, go look at some boss fights. Look how sometimes some of their attacks are in sync with where the music is, and this dancer boss is the only one that's like it off sync, and that tends to like completely mess up the flow when you can dodge or even attack or learn where some of the movements. Like, she's a really cool boss. So can't wait to hear when you fight it. So how about you, Eric? What have you been playing?
So there's 3 games that I'm rotating around. Also, by the way, Zach, I really want to play more Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so we gotta link up for that. But sure. In this year where everyone talks about it as being like the craziest year for games ever, there's 3 games that are my top 3 games of the year right now that nobody talks about, which is I think a little bit weird. I guess maybe understandable. The first one that I probably put the most time in is World of Warcraft Classic Hardcore, which I'm considering to be a new game because that's a whole new system, and it's amazing, and it just launched this year, and it's the best MMO that you can play. It's the only MMO that's still a social MMO outside of maybe like 14? OSRS
or FF14.
No, not even 14. Like 14's a modern MMO, and we can go on this tangent if you want, but like 14, Destiny, Division, Warframe, like all these like MMOs nowadays, they basically
MMO lights.
You could call it that, but yeah, they essentially kind of put like I take this huge group of players and silo them off in these very small instances in this world that's like a bunch of that's stitched together by loading screens. And World of Warcraft is a huge social experience that is completely driven by social interaction. At the classic World of Warcraft, anyway, retail World of Warcraft is just like Final Fantasy with matchmaking and instances and all that stuff, which is fine. And those games are awesome too. But there's something special about World of Warcraft, and in hardcore mode, it just takes the need and the drive to kind of go into these social interactions, and it like cranks it up because it's a mandatory to kind of involve yourself in the world and connect with other players in order to survive, because if you die, it's over. That's what hardcore is. So I've been playing a lot of that still. Been playing a lot of Counter-Strike 2 that just came out recently. And that game is just incredible. It's funny because they really didn't change a lot of stuff, but the small things that they did change make such amazing differences to the game. The 3D kind of smoke effects through the smoke grenades is like mind-blowing. I've never seen anything like that in a video game before. And I think that game is, especially with like the seasoned gaming crowd, which tends to lean more towards either just gaming on console in general or just console experiences on PC. You don't see a lot of people outside of maybe Steve talk about stuff like World of Warcraft or Counter-Strike, stuff like that.
And funny enough, Steve was playing World of Warcraft earlier today. It was funny that I was like, huh, that's random. I thought, oh, that's random. But now you mentioned that Classic is now, I understand why he would be playing.
Steve plays more World of Warcraft than me by far. He's really like, he's very seasoned in World of Warcraft. I think he plays more retail, but he's a mega World of Warcraft fan. But also I've been playing, and this game is criminally underrated. BattleBit Remastered. I don't know if any of you have even heard of that game.
I've heard of it.
But I've heard of it, but yeah, but I haven't played it.
It is so good. It's the best Battlefield game that's probably ever, in my opinion, but at least since like BF4 or maybe like 3 on 360. It is it has like very kind of cutesy, kind of blocky graphics, but outside of the visuals not really being super realistic, all of the mechanics are very realistic. So it's kind of this weird kind of mix of block characters with like realistic guns with realistic gun physics, and like you can like take out a magazine that's half full, because if you reload it, like you lose ammo, and you can like kind of pull out your magazine to like check how much ammo you have left and put it back in, and like all kinds. And it has full proximity chat in this huge map with like 100 people, which is like so hilarious. You can grab someone that's downed and drag them across the battlefield behind cover to revive them. Like there's so much, it's just chaos, and it's so fun. And it's just, it's criminally underrated. I feel like I should probably maybe write something about it on Season Gaming to get the word out. But
is it officially out? Is it officially out, or is it sort of like early access-ish?
I think it's a Steam early access title.
Yeah, they might call it early access, but the amount of content that's in it is like beyond what you would expect for a AAA launch. It has like, I think like 12 or 15 maps with like, I think it's like 30 or plus guns and like a bunch of different modes.
Everything's destructible, from what I understand.
I would say the vast majority of stuff is destructible. It can't get to the point where there's like no map left. Like it's so that because there needs to be
Levolution, kind of like BF4 back in the day.
Yeah. Well, yeah, BF4 was like, a lot of it was kind of scripted. So like if you do a certain thing or do a certain amount of damage, then like an animation will play out where a big building falls down. Whereas this is like all the buildings are like physics objects, and you can like take chunks out of them and they could fall down and stuff like that. But yeah, if you think there's another team on the other side of this wall, you can just throw a grenade or shoot a rocket at it and blow the wall up and take them out. And it's very, very satisfying, especially when like some dude, because it's Steam, right? It's PC. So some dude will just drive by in a Humvee with like Roland by Chameleonaire blasting in his mic and just drive by blasting music and stuff like that. It's such a fun time. But between that and Counter-Strike and WoW, that's kind of been where I've been doing most of my gaming this year, aside from like the odd kind of amazing 10 out of 10 spectacle that just seems to come out like once a month.
Yeah, like either a Jedi Survivor, a Final Fantasy 16, or maybe a Zelda here and there.
Like I platinum Jedi Survivor. I'm out making my way through Final Fantasy. Yeah, I just loved
16.
Yeah.
What's
the last thing you played about 16? Do you remember, Eric? Just to kind of have an idea how far are you in?
I'm trying to. I don't want to spoil things for your audience, so I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. Someone lost their hand and ran away, and
I'll put it like this: he got Count Dooku. He got Count Dooku from Star Wars.
Yeah, I just bought Count Dooku, and I think I know where Count Dooku is now. Yeah, and I'm going to find it. That's where I am.
Oh, I tell it.
Like, what is that? Like 60 50% through, 60ish.
That would be
Yeah,
like the halfway point.
Yeah, that's about halfway.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay,
It's
cool.
very
So I got
long, but it's, I don't know, like 16 brought me back to like how old like Final Fantasies like felt long wise and like story wise, how full they were. You know what I mean? Even though its gameplay loop is completely different. I mean, it plays like Devil May Cry, but I
wish it was
love
harder.
its story.
I do love the story, and
It
the
gets
spectacle.
harder.
And I love Clive. I think Clive and Ichiban are like the two best new characters of this like console generation.
Agreed.
I love them. I just the reason why I haven't been like no lifing it is because I don't even like, I'm not trying to flex because I'm not like MLG or anything like that. But the game, I find the game is not very challenging at all.
Yeah.
I don't have any of those like cheat codes on with the different bracelets or anything like that. But yeah, there's some bosses where I have died, but then I'll just spawn with like full meds, full life. Bosses already half dead, and it's just like at that point, it's
like the challenge. It's like now that I've been more removed, I don't know why the Final Fantasy mode that unlocks until you beat it, it's not unlocked like right out of the gate, because it's like that, because that way it would like appease people like you, because Final Fantasy mode, there is more challenge, enemies are definitely spongier, it will require like, it requires more combos and all that, and there's even a way for you to make the game even harder in the arcade mode, in the I think it's Ultimania mode that's called, that makes it extra harder too. So they shouldn't have gate kept like the difficulty like for later, especially for like a long game. So I kind of get it. So but
I would
like,
be way more invested if they did that. Like God of War, I played both of them on Give Me God of War mode, and it's so much more fun. Like for me in that mode, because it really forces you to engage in all of the game's mechanics, or else you can't win.
Do you beat the Valkyrie Queen and Give Me God of War? Yeah, that thing was like, it took me a full week to try to do it.
I actually haven't platinumed the first game and Give Me God of War, so I think there's a Valkyrie Queen at the end of that, and then
much easier though, way easier. Yeah, so it's a way easier like Valkyrie Queen on Ragnarok, not even remotely as close as the one from the original one. And then after a little bit of a technical hiccup there, and so we were talking, Eric, about the about like the Valkyrie Queen on Ragnarok, that it's not as hard as the one in the original one, also because you get the help of Freya also in that fight, so that makes the fight also relatively easier, and also you have the extra weapon in that game. So I never did Give Me God of War for that one. I did Give Me God of War in the original one during the pandemic, because I just wanted to replay the game a different way. So I wouldn't be able to tell you, like, at least from that difficulty, how that one goes.
Yeah, the first game, I actually reinstalled it recently to give it another go. But the real reason why I didn't finish is because other games came out. But the part that gave me trouble was I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's like that area, like that trial or maze thing you have to go in that has like it's just, you're constantly taking damage while you're in there. And like,
it was not Muspelheim. The Mist World, that it's like RNG based, like
and I think there's a Valkyrie in there, so I wouldn't have killed that Valkyrie, so that means I wouldn't have gotten the Queen. But I did do everything else, and it was really good. But Final Fantasy definitely should have that hard mode enabled at launch, because I don't think I'm gonna play it again like New Game Plus. So
it's a good 60-hour chunker, like because I remember hearing that it was like 30 something, because remember I reviewed it, I was like, okay, 30 something hours I can do it, and then I looked at my clock, I was like, crap, it was like 70 to 75 hours for me, because I did literally everything. So but Final Fantasy 16, like the story is like absolutely amazing. And wait, did Eric freeze?
I think so.
Oh no,
I agree though, it's very chef's kiss.
Especially like near the end, it's like it really hit emotionally, like that was like that game like hits so many emotions, like and not even just normal love, but like how it portrays brotherly love, and like the love is like actual like family love is like hit me harder than I was expecting. And so I'm really hoping you get to see like the second half of the story, Eric, for 16, because it really hits. Yeah, it hits like it hits some emotional wall-ups. I was like, that is one of the few games that I literally was sobbing by the end. I was not. It was like 11 o'clock at night. I was like in tears. I was like, I was not ready for this. I was like, I'm not okay. So I really want to hear like what you think, like what you think, especially how it deals with like love and family, like it like amidst everything that happens. So and then real quick before we talk about like our 25 favorite games ever, because as everyone knows, like I think it was a week or two ago, the internet got ablaze with like, here are my top favorite games like ever, and everyone's like posting their lists and all that. For 2023, what is like top of the mind? What's your favorite game this year, or game of the year, if you want to call it? Yeah.
I'm gonna not think about it and just go from my gut and give the caveat that I haven't finished Final Fantasy yet. I haven't played Spider-Man yet. I'm gonna say, and I don't want to pick like Counter-Strike 2 or something like that. I'm gonna say Dredge.
Dredge? Yeah, and you reviewed Dredge also, right?
Yeah.
You can check his review over at seasongaming.com.
Yeah, dude, head over there. It's a fantastic game. They have DLC coming, I think, next month. I would say it's a coin flip between that and Sea of Stars. Sea of Stars is also fantastic.
Yeah.
The reason why I would give Dredge a slight edge is because it's like the first game from that studio. It's a very small team, and they like Sabotage is also like not a mega developer too. The team that made Sea of Stars, but they have like pedigree with the Messenger and stuff like that. So
I love the Messenger. Freaking love the Messenger.
It's great. So everyone kind of had high hopes and expectations for this game, whereas Dredge, I literally didn't even hear about it until I got the code. So it was very surprising, and what they were able to pull off with the limitations that they have in terms of creating atmosphere and just like a sense of dread, honestly, and the cool like Lovecraftian story. It's such a good game. It's so like unique too. Like Sea of Stars has some unique mechanics and like relatively kind of unique story, but it is kind of like a melding of Chrono Trigger and Zelda and a Mario RPG, which is awesome. Like those three games are some of my favorite games of all time. But Dredge is something I like never seen anything like that before, and it's just a masterpiece.
Do you know if it's on Game Pass? I'm trying to remember. No. Okay,
no, it's not. But it's relatively cheap. I think it's like this is Canadian, $40 Canadian or $30 Canadian, so probably like $20 American, something like that. I have no idea.
Yeah, definitely gonna check. That's one of the ones of like the long list of the games that passed me based on like when it came out around that time. But definitely have heard really good things about that. And Sea of Stars I have installed, so just waiting for the right time. What about you, Zach? Favorite game this year out of your gut? Like,
I'm kind of biased because I actually have a full arm sleeve of it, but I would have to say Dead Space remake. Nice. But if we're not counting remakes, because I don't think remakes should be in the Game of the Year discussion, like
counterpoint, that kind of topics. I actually think otherwise, depending on the kind of remake. Like, if it's not just like a visual remake and the exact same game, I say, yeah, it doesn't belong. But then, like, I think of RE4 remake that, apart from a few areas, it has been like, it's not the exact same game from 2005, and I feel it deserves like combo. Even Space, like RE2,
yeah, Dead Space is the same way, but I just feel like those games have, I don't know, like whenever I think of Game of the Year, I think of like what is the newest like new thing. You know what I mean?
Like what represents that year?
Yeah,
history.
Exactly. Like if you asked me like what my favorite horror movie of this year was, and like I was gonna say, because it does something that's like new, it's refreshing, it's unique, and it's good, you know. But Dead Space is mostly my bias talking, but if I were to take that one out because that's my favorite game of all time, I'd have to say Final Fantasy. Well, it come down to Final Fantasy or Liza P, really, but I think I like Final Fantasy a little bit more than Liza P.
No, I totally get that. That's something that I love about the idea of like talking about Game of the Year as like a more professional thing versus like a personal, like what's your personal top 10. I think that's like in your personal, you could like get away with saying Dead Space is my favorite thing that I played this year. But then another game, like you can, it's kind of like that's how it was last year in 2022. Like I said my favorite game was Ragnarok, but I backed Elden Ring as like the game that won that year. Kind of like if I remove my bias, if I remove the fact that I told that game to fuck itself at the end because fuck the Elden Beast. I feel like I hate that stupid boss, even though I beat it. But I was like, no, I was so incensed by it by the end. so I was like, yeah, it's like to me, like my personal is like that was not my favorite, but I think I can remove my personal thing and see no, Elden Ring did something. So I guess I see both your answers, at least from my perspective, are right. and for me, it's Final Fantasy 16. It was like it's been the game that I kid you not, like when I go on walks, what's the soundtrack that I'm listening to? That one. Like when you hear like especially
really
the
Mind the Flame.
Rise of the Flame, especially like that immediately pumps me up to. I don't like running, and that makes me like want to run, and then I start like I use it to pump. And a lot of the story moments just like live rent free in my mind. So it's like it's been the I thought Zelda was gonna be it, but I'm like, man, 16 has it more in my mind. And the ironic thing, from like those 3 games that I reviewed in that stretch, from like Jedi Survivor, Zelda, and Final Fantasy, it was like Final Fantasy was the one I reviewed the lower from the 3. I gave it a 9, but it's my favorite of the 3, and I guess Zelda 10 and Jedi Survivor like a 9.5, and with Jedi Survivor, I'm like, did I overrate it a little bit? Because I really enjoyed it then, but then like revisiting, I'm like, I'm seeing a lot of the jank now. I was like, was this jank always here? Has it gotten worse? I don't know. So it's like, sometimes hindsight is 2020, but it's like, yeah, it's like Final Fantasy 16 is my favorite this year. It's really stuck hard, and it made me go back to old Final Fantasies that I never played. Like it put me in the mood. And
yeah, I saw you playing those on PlayStation.
Yeah, and one of those made my top 25. So, and I'm definitely gonna talk about those. So, now like to the topic at hand, our 25 favorite games, regardless of order. Like, ironically, mine were in order from like the very, very best to like the least best. But I know like you guys had just listed it. So, who wants to go first? You can like list them all. Like,
I'll go first because my phone's dying.
Go for it.
So, Dead Space, Witcher 3, The Last of Us, Dark Souls Remastered, Halo, Dead Space 2, Bloodborne, Resident Evil 4 Remake, RE2 Remake, 16 Final Fantasy, Halo 3, Splinter Cell Conviction, Crisis Core, Mass Effect 1, Dishonored, Final Fantasy 7 Remake, Batman Arkham City, Dragon Age, The Darkness 2, Final Fantasy 9, Gears of War, Hitman Blood Money, LA Noire, Red Faction Guerrilla, and Dead Space 3.
Nice.
And I wanted to kind of switch Dead Space 3 with Final Fantasy 15, but the lore in Dead Space 3 is like...
Yeah, Dead Space 3, the only Dead Space that I still haven't finished. And I always say, eventually I'm going to go back and compat, and I never do. So, how about you, Eric? You're 25.
I think our lists are going to be pretty unique from each other. I actually did try my best to order this from top to bottom. I have Halo 2, number 1, World of Warcraft, Elden Ring, God of War, Destiny 1, Dark Souls 3. Oh, also, by the way, I limited it to 1 game per franchise. Otherwise, it would be like every Halo game on here.
like Ain's list.
Yeah, it would be closer to Ain's. But I wanted to pick my favorite from each franchise. What did I leave off? Dark Souls 3, Hearthstone, Resident Evil 4. I haven't played Remake yet, but so that could replace 4. But Resident Evil 4 for PS2, I think is where I played it. BioShock 1, Metal Gear Solid 2, The Last of Us, Yakuza Like a Dragon, Dota 2, StarCraft 2, Splinter Cell, Pandora Tomorrow, Gears of War 1, Uncharted 2, Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, Horizon Zero Dawn, Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, Super Mario RPG, Phantom Dust, Luigi's Mansion 3, and Braid.
Awesome. So
go for it.
I
was going to say, one thing I want to iterate about all of the remakes on my list. When I put the remakes on there, I still consider those interchangeable with the originals because I love the originals just as much as the remakes. But that's just me.
Oh yeah, I feel you. Remix or originals are valid. It's our lists. So I had two versions of this list. I did one that included many entries from like one franchise, and I did one kind of limited to like the ones you said, Eric. So I'm gonna do that one of the just the one entry the franchise, with the caveat that I did put two repeats of a franchise, but I consider 2D versions and 3D versions separate. So that's how I justified. That's how I justified it. So yeah, I'm gonna read them from like 25 to 1, so like at least to that. So first, Gears of War, then Halo 3, then Batman Arkham Asylum, Destiny 2, Assassin's Creed 2, Metroid Fusion, Metroid Prime, Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, Star Wars Rogue Leader Rogue Squadron 2, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, Splinter Cell Chaos Theory, Ori and the Blind Forest, Donkey Kong Country 2, A Diddy Kong's Quest, Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots, Shadow of the Colossus, Mass Effect 2, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Resident Evil 4 2005 version, Super Mario Galaxy, Red Dead Redemption 2, The Last of Us, Uncharted 2, God of War, Final Fantasy 6, and Super Mario World. So basically Super Mario World is like my number one. And now like the fun exercise, like kind of like the fun exercise for like these games. Pick out of all of this 5 games that really are like really special to you, and we can go one each. So if you need time, let me know.
So for mine, I mean, I'm gonna of course talk about Dead Space, and I'll tell the story that I put in my review. But I was raised in a really I had a really messed up childhood, but I had a very strict like upbringing up until I was 18. And my first interaction with horror was when I went to go visit my dad on a weekend, and he just bought this new game. My dad was notoriously terrible at video games. Like he broke controllers because me and my best friend would like stomp him on Halo 1 split screen as 11-year-olds. But he made a bet with me. He said, I bet you couldn't play Dead Space. He got it. It came out just before Halloween. We were there for the weekend of Halloween, and I started playing it, and that intro scared the absolute shit out of me. And eventually I manned up and came back to it, and I just fell in love with the franchise. I have all the books, all the comics, the Blu-rays. It's by far it's just so special to me because now I'm like obsessed with horror, like 80s, 70s. I love watching people get murked. I love seeing grotesque monsters and just getting scared, even though I don't get scared anymore. I just love what it did for me in terms of like letting me grow into horror and being the person I am now. But Dead Space is definitely
awesome. One of yours, Eric.
It
can be memory. It can be a memory specific to you, or like a specific game memory from within. So just so you know, so you don't feel like you have to tell like a personal story, like just in case.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'll get this out of the way because it's probably the weirdest one on my list, or the one that's like least likely to be on anyone's list. Luigi's Mansion 3. So I'm a dad. I think we've discussed that already. I have 2 kids. One of them is kind of was approaching the age where they could kind of like grasp a controller. And when you are a parent, or when you become a parent, you're gonna like hope and pray that your kids are gonna have similar interests to you, and that you can bond over like what your favorite hobby is. Hopefully they'll kind of adapt to that. And I tried a bunch of different games to try to get my daughter to play with me, and she didn't really show much of an interest in any of them. Luigi's Mansion 3, though, has this really interesting co-op mode where one player is Luigi. And so all the puzzles and the hard stuff and the stuff that like a 4 or 5-year-old wouldn't really get, like Luigi does that. But he has a sidekick that's like the slime version of Luigi. And they are just as important to the game. They're just as important to the story. They're in the cutscenes. So my daughter felt like super involved, but it's much easier to play as a slime, and she can kind of get away with not being super good at video games, but still having like a huge role in the game. It's like they specifically designed it in a way where like a parent can play with a young child. And it was just such a good bonding experience, and that's kind of the first game that me and her played through from start to finish. I've actually beaten that game probably like 6 times with her, because like I expected her to want to try a different game after, but she just wanted to run it back like constantly. And
awesome.
like there's a really awesome memory of the final boss. There's a mechanic in the final boss where you kind of get separated, and there's something that the slime has to do in order to like trigger a damage phase or like actually defeat the boss. And it's pretty challenging for someone who's like a 4 or 5 year old who's getting used to gaming. And I don't know if it was luck or whatever, but there was a situation where she had to accomplish this mechanic or we die. If she does accomplish it, then we beat the boss, and she was able to do that. So it's her first experience of like overcoming an obstacle and when winning a video game. And I was able to be there and go through that with her in co-op and record a video of it on my Switch. And yeah, just that will always be one of my favorite games of all time, because it's the first game that I beat with my first daughter.
That's freaking awesome. I love that.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So one of mine that I'm going to list is Assassin's Creed 2. And kind of like my memory for that one is that is the first time I used a video game to help me at school. Which is so funny because that was even before Discovery Tours. But it was like back in 2009 in my school, we used to do something called the History Fair, where we would go to like pick specific countries and kind of tell a little bit about what makes those countries special, like what landmarks are important, or what historical figures are like are of note. And I literally used every freaking thing that was in Assassin's Creed 2, from like the different big landmarks, like the different chapels from like Florence and Venice, talking about Leonardo da Vinci, and emerging characters like within that era, like Niccolo Machiavelli, and me even taking screenshots from the game and trying to like match those in real life to like understand like some of like this different landmarks was like one of the most weird and unique ways that I've ever interacted with a video game, because usually that was still by the time before gaming has became as like intrinsic like it is now, and seeing that I could use a game like this in such a unique way. On top of that, how awesome Assassin's Creed 2 was just as a sequel to the original. That was something that both historically, like, we'll look back as this a big example, as one of the bigger, oh yeah, the original was good but had like some roughness, and look what an amazing leap this game was. But then on top of that, me having that experience, and then at the same time being at school, using this amazing game to help me with one of my projects, is something that still to this day is so weird that I was able to pull off, and I got an A on that project thanks to this game. So Assassin's Creed 2 is like, I always, even though in my list it's like listed lower, it's like I have such a soft spot for that franchise, especially right now as I'm playing Mirage. So
yeah.
Yeah, so,
I always say that Assassin's Creed is where I learned everything about history.
Yeah, and also kind of like I was a history buff thanks to my grandfather. So everything that is all very history, like history heavy, like it reminds me of him. He passed away that year in particular. Like 2009 was the year he passed away. So that was the first time I did a project without his help. So that was that it felt very, very special. Like kind of like and bittersweet that how a game helped me after I lost like a big tool when I was like 15 back then, and what made me love history so much, which was always my conversations with him. So Assassin's Creed 2, I love you. So
that's awesome.
So Zack, your next one. Mm-hmm.
Next one. I'm gonna go with another odd one on my list that isn't on a lot of other people's lists, and that's Red Faction Guerrilla.
Nice.
So I got every achievement in that game on the 360, but I remember that game was like a comfort game for me at like a really important time, because I was raised by my grandparents, and that year in particular my grandmother died, and there was just a lot of like really personal dissonant like issues that kind of had me like forced to grow up. And I remember just being angry all the time, and I could open that game up and just be like, there's a military base, I'm going to destroy every single bit of it. And it was just so rewarding, even though it was goofy as hell, being able to hit someone with a sledgehammer and watch them fly like a Dragon Ball Z character, ragdoll into a wall with their legs flying around like flop noodles. Like it was just a very therapeutic experience, and it's always going to be an experience I look back at and I'm like, I loved what that game did for me. But yeah.
Awesome. Eric, your next one.
I'm gonna go with Uncharted 2. This is probably on some people's list. It's a pretty highly acclaimed game. What's interesting for me though is I kind of mentioned it at the beginning of the video. I used to be like, I only had an Xbox, and because of that, I had to be a toxic fanboy because I didn't have a PlayStation. And I was kind of like that through the original Xbox era, although I will die on the hill that the original Xbox was a superior console. There's not even a question.
Very underrated even now. Very underrated. It's insane the catalog that it got in just 4 years.
Go check out my top 25 article, everybody. It's amazing. Anyway, and then 360, I didn't have a PS3, and then Xbox One. For the first half of that, I didn't have anything PlayStation, and there was like we needed to get something in our living room to kind of stream Netflix on, because the only device that we had to stream Netflix on was my Xbox, and that was in my gaming room. And so I was thinking about getting like a Roku or something like that, and then I wanted to buy a used one, and some guy was selling a PS3 Fat for like around the same price as what like Roku's were going for, and it came with like pretty much every exclusive, like all the Uncharted's, Last of Us. Like this would have been like probably 2015, something like that. So I got that, and I just thought I'd play Uncharted, and I thought Uncharted was okay. It was good enough for me to maybe check out the sequel. And Uncharted 2 was the game that kind of made me a huge fan of PlayStation. I had a PS1 before the Xbox, so I had been a fan like a long time back, but this was the game where that's where I realized like kind of what you were talking about. It's like all this time that I'm not actively like dissing PlayStation, or like I wasn't like toxic. I shouldn't say I was toxic, but I definitely like mentally was just like kind of ignoring everything happening over there because I was on this team. That's the kind of mentality I had. But then I start to realize like there's so many awesome games over here. And so I ended up getting a PS4 that Christmas, getting like Horizon in 2016, and then immediately getting a PS4 Pro because of how good Horizon is. And honestly, I'm pretty even in terms of like how much I play each platform. But I would say like from 2016 to now, the PlayStation probably edges out everything else in terms of my most played. And it all started with Uncharted 2.
Yeah. That's not gonna be like my memory that I want to use, but my memory with Uncharted 2 is like so funny because it was the first game that I was able to buy by selling a bunch of my games, because this is kind of like a funny memory. That was at the time where my dad was still buying me my games, and for me to get something he would have to find interest in it. And this was the time where like Uncharted 2 was just seeming like this massive leap, especially coming from the very okay-ish first one. And my dad was like very into Call of Duty around that time, and he had given me the vibe that he was not gonna get me this game because he wanted instead to invest the money on Modern Warfare 2, which was still upcoming. And that was the first time I was like, no chance. Like, I am not missing this. So I went to like a lot of old PS2 games that I was not playing. I was like, okay, how much? Okay, I'm gonna take it to like my local pawn shop and see how much I'm gonna get out of this. And here I'm in El Salvador. The game cost $75. I had to sell like 10 PS2 games to get kind of like that money to be able to buy it. And that's still something that when I look back, I'm glad I did, because just the idea of missing out at that moment, something that was like, that seemed so revolutionary, kind of like the next leap, especially like a game that merged the cinematic qualities of movies into a game that you could actually play. That was nailing in a way the other games like were attempting and not. And I was like, I'll never forget that. My dad was really mad that I sold games, because he then said like, I would have bought it to you. I was like, you were giving me an impression you were not. So that's why I took matters in my own hand. I always have like that fun memory with Uncharted 2. And that's like my number 4 favorite. It's like that was like what made me love PlayStation more. And I was already like in the PlayStation camp with PS2 and all that, but on PS3, other than Metal Gear Solid 4, which to me was like, at least I'm closing a chapter of like a franchise that I was like looking for. Like I followed through in PS2 a lot. Uncharted 2 gave me like gave me like the hope that there is more beyond Metal Gear. It's like this console has like juice, and look where we are now. So
Yeah.
So yeah, but I'm not gonna use that game. So I kind of want to talk about like God of War 2018. Why this game is special for me is that without this game, I wouldn't be gaming right now. I hit like a rough patch late 2017, early 2018, where I was like, my life got upended, or where I was, and like a lot of games were like not hitting the spot. That was like everything's like an open world. This little games as a service thing is kind of like starting hitting all this multiplayer. That was around the time Fortnite was kind of like exploding in popularity, and I was like, have I reached the point where it's like gaming has passed me? Is it going to in a direction that it's not what appealed to me in the first place? And for like almost an entire year after, since like Breath of the Wild, after I finished that game, like no game was like hitting the spot for me. I was like, man, it's like I'm feeling grumpy about playing games. It's like the games are not fulfilling. I'm dropping them, not finishing them. I was wondering, maybe I'm gonna quit gaming, because it's like I don't remember ever feeling like this. And God of War like hit all the right notes, like when I needed it to, because it reminded me why I loved video, like what were the kinds of games I really loved. And on top of that, like seeing a franchise that I remember really enjoying on the PS3 and PS2 have just been this like very raunchy, ultra violent button mashers that with like no real depth but really good scale and all that, and seeing like what a developer that really put an effort into reimagining something and telling a really personal story about letting go of like a past thing, and realizing how much that was resonating to me at that time. I was kind of like embittered about like the changes that were happening in my life, and seeing how that game was like helping me through that, and it re-energized me to continue gaming. Is like I always hold that game like in such high regards because of that, because I'm like I can imagine the point where I wouldn't even be here without that, without that one, based on where things were, and it helped me out of the rough patch. so
It's interesting because God of War Ragnarok, like you can read more about it in Steve's review, but God of War Ragnarok was similarly like helping Steve get through a rough patch as well.
Yeah,
it's really awesome how powerful like games can be.
Oh yeah, especially like learning like the thing that happened while he was reviewing, and that's the funny thing that happened to him. You can go read the review there at Season Gaming, like while that was happening, and how he used it for coping. So, Zach, what's your next one?
Next one is probably going to be Splinter Cell Conviction. So in the PS2 era, I absolutely adored Splinter Cell. That was one of the games that my dad would rage at. And I'd be like, hey, let me try it. And then I'd play it and get through it. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. Even though like the original games are like inching slowly and slowly. And I just remember like Conviction, like hitting this like ultra violent, angry, like awesome tone where you're like all powerful, like you can think things out and execute. Not just that, like the co-op, I have so many fond memories of playing the co-op with friends, and then getting to that point at the end where you're like,
so good,
you're gonna die. You know. I will always look back at that game like very fondly. But I love the Splinter Cell franchise. And I even like Blacklist, but Michael Ironside's performance in Conviction, and just its story of twists and turns being taken in a video game, the interrogation scenes, I just loved it.
It was the best 24 game we never got. If you've ever seen 24. So
yeah.
Eric, which one's your next one?
I'm gonna go with, my voice is like going. I'm gonna go with the Destiny 1. You might talk about Destiny 2, but I'm gonna talk about Destiny 1. I will kind of touch back on this like later in this, but one of my biggest gaming regrets I ever, like in terms of just like what I did or didn't do in the realm of gaming, was not playing World of Warcraft like at launch, like in 2004, like the start of like a huge like long-tailed like MMO style game. And I'll talk about that, why that happened later on. But I didn't want to make that mistake with Destiny, and coming from like being developed by Bungie was like insane. It was the experience of being at the ground floor of the launch of like what would become and grow into such a massive game, being able to do raids for the first time, creating a clan and being the clan leader and getting all my friends in and like organizing raid nights and stuff like that. And then like there's so many awesome memories from like Trials of Osiris, like just hanging out in the tower. The tower theme from Destiny 1 is just like constantly in my head even to this day. Getting all the lore books, like my friends would make fun of me because I would know everything, like all the lore, have the highest grimoire score, be able to like put context behind like the things they don't explain in the game, and they could like just be having that encyclopedic like knowledge of everything in that world. And then like I don't know, like waking up my girlfriend at like 2 a.m. because Galahorn dropped on Crota, and trying to explain to her why this is such a big deal and her not buying it at all. It's just that still is probably like my one of, it's probably tied with Halo 2 for being the best multiplayer experience that I've ever had. And it is my favorite game from, and I think it's the best game personally from the Xbox One PS4 generation, which is obviously like pretty blasphemic to say that with like God of War and Dark Souls 3 and The Witcher 3 and all these games. But that the experience of playing Destiny, I think it changed a bit with Destiny 2, but dude, Destiny 1, amazing game.
And just to add, I would make the argument Destiny was the defining game of that generation. Look how much it inspired. Like a lot of people like to give Fortnite all the flowers for like what it did for like live service and all that, but no, Destiny did it first. Destiny ushered that, and it was able to mainstreamize in a way, like I know that word doesn't exist, like the idea of being able to play an MMO style shooter around that time in a way that so many people were able to find like more accessible compared to like a more traditional MMO. Is like it doesn't get its flowers enough, how it was able to break that wall. And to me, like it's so funny. I was gonna say Destiny 2 in my next one. And the thing is that I could interchange Destiny 1 and Destiny 2 in a way, because it's like I'm usually a very single player heavy gamer, but Destiny was like the one. It has been the one game that made me break through out of my shell if I just want to play alone or just enjoy my single player experiences and all that. And also kind of like that became a thing here where I was, because I never was able to like get into co-op craze like I really wanted it to. Almost no one had 360s around the time that Gears of War and Halo 3 were big, like this co-op experiences. Everyone was on PS3, and the worst part about living in a Latin American country with PS3 is that FIFA is like the dominant thing, like what many people are playing, and I hated that game so much. So it was like I hated not knowing that they would never want to try anything else other than FIFA. So it made me feel very insular. So that's why I was so insular into single player experiences. But Destiny hitting around the time that I went to college, and finding finding classmates that were playing that game and getting to play online, experiencing my first raid on January 3rd, 2015 at Bolt of Glass at 2 a.m. in the morning. I still remember that vividly, because I was like, what? Man, it's like all these times that we saw the E3 demos, the famous E3 demos, like, hey, you do this and all that. Everyone was like, that's BS. That's not what you do when you play with friends. But Destiny actually was like, you have to play raids like that. You have to coordinate. It's like, you have to like really become comrades with the people that you play. And till this day, Destiny and Destiny 2 like combined is like my most played game. It like made me broke my shell to the point that I'm a headmaster of a clan. I run raids almost weekly if I can. Like I love the idea of like using this as such a social platform, and I'm glad that this has been the game that facilitated that for me, because it's like I don't do that with many other games. It's like in the multiplayer like sphere, and in the highs and lows, yes, like Destiny has had many highs and lows. We're currently in the low in the Lightfall era, but despite that, it's like the highs of the Destiny franchise are always like are such that they're always vivid memories. Like I'm always checking what's happening in the game. It inspired me more into pursuing podcasting thanks to things like Fireteam Chat over at IGN. Seeing that a podcast can be like beyond just like the console coverage, but you can like make content out of like a single game. And seeing that, it was a very inspiring game in like many different areas, and I really like appreciate what it's done. And the fact that it's been like almost 10 years and I've been in the ride almost the entirety with very little breaks says a lot. So
I think that the raiding in Destiny is the best co-op experience that you could have
ever.
by like
Mhm.
such a large, like infinitely measurable margin on, especially on console. There's similar experiences on like Warcraft and stuff like that, but on console, you can't have a better experience. And part of the reason, well, the biggest and the main reason why I choose Destiny 1 over 2 is because when 2 came out and specifically the
Drop the ball.
Curse of Osiris.
Uh-huh.
Curse of Osiris was like the clan like killer, and that's when my clan went away, and that's when it was very tough to get raids going, and that's when you had to use LFG a lot. And then if I had a consistent clan with my friends and they all stuck through it, I'd still be playing it just as much. In fact, one memory that I forgot to mention was when King's Fall came out. This was like right before I started, like right before I had kids. My job was like I worked like long shifts and had lots of time off. And I took a week off for the game, and my goal was to complete the raid before the first reset, the King's Fall raid. And it got to the point where my clan just like wasn't cutting it. Like I felt like I could do it, but there was some anchors on my clan.
They were tilted. The tilt and that has gone haywire at that point, I imagine.
Yeah, I try not to tilt because I know these people in real life, but yeah, it was bad. And the reset, I think in my time zone is, I think it's at like 4 a.m. 4 or 5 a.m. something like that. And it was like 12:30 a.m. when my clanmates like were like, we got to go to bed, this is not happening. And I was like, I went to bed, like I walked upstairs, I got in my bed, I laid there for like 10 minutes, and I was just like, no, fuck this. I'm fucking beating this raid. And I went downstairs and I just LFG'd first group. Everyone kept wiping. And after an hour, I left. Second group, same thing. It's 3 a.m. I have 1 hour left. Brand new group. And we fucking beat it at like 3:45. And I beat King's Fall before the first reset, which is like,
damn.
Beating it before any raid before the first reset's a big deal because you get only that 1 week of progression. After the reset, you get a whole new week of getting like progression and getting stronger and getting better gear. So that was before they had like the jackets and all that stuff too, or else I would have.
You would have gotten a jacket. You would have totally gotten a jacket if they did that back then.
Sure, but that's King's Fall is my favorite raid. Taken King's my favorite expansion. Destiny is most my favorite game of that generation.
Yeah, and it's more, especially more shouted like Taken King has proven how like any game can come back. Let's not forget, everyone was like the vanilla launch of Destiny, such a massive disappointment, and all of that. It's like that was the first. It set the template that we're even seeing in things like Cyberpunk that you have your chance at a comeback. Taken King was that. So it was like, it's so funny. It's like they were trailblazers. So,
I can see that. Personally, for me, I never felt like it was bad because like Vault of Glass was just so awesome, but like it was like under 10% of players like beat Vault of Glass or played Vault of Glass, so they didn't experience the reason why Destiny is so good. Most people haven't because like rating like that popular, but if people did and like find groups, I think they would agree.
Yeah, you're real quick, Zack. Have you ever played Destiny? Have you tried it?
Yeah, and I loved 1 at first, and I remember I was in the Marine Corps. I was in Okinawa, Japan, and they released the Taken King, and my shit at the time was Iron Banner. But I didn't have the money for the Taken King, and I remember going into Iron Banner that week and realized that I was not the same light level as everyone else, and that it was locked behind that. I think it was like $30, 25 or $30 at the time. And I remember just at that point being like, like this game has been about community, and I feel like getting punished for not being able to get this DLC and like play just the typical general like multiplayer modes was really unfair. So I haven't touched the franchise since.
Yeah. I understand. Like in Destiny is like a microcosm of the best things in gaming and the worst things in gaming all at once. It's the greatest game ever and the worst game you've ever played. Like equally. That is always the.
You would be so mad if you see like yes. You were mad that you had to pay $30. Now you have to buy an expansion that's like $40, a season pass, like a la carte microtransactions, a dungeon pass, and like. Yeah, I think that's it. Maybe there's something else.
Unless you pay the $100 ahead, like from the start. If you pay $100, you got everything. But then if not, you're like nickel and dime. So it's like it's so fun. It's
$100 a year.
I'm good.
I can see where that's bad, but like I pay $15 a month for World of Warcraft, so like
yeah, the
you
value at the end,
for.
the value at the end, like kind of like circles around, and you're like, it sometimes ends up being worth it, sometimes not, but it's like, so many highs and lows, but those memories, I tell you, with those Destiny is like, they have cemented here and in the heart also. So then now what's your next game?
Okay,
Zach?
So
2 more.
next one I'm going to talk about is Dishonored. I don't know what it is about like revenge tales, like even in like film and books, like I love it. Like The Count of Monte Cristo is one of my all-time favorite books. But Dishonored like really struck a chord with me because I remember watching all the gameplay for it and I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna play this like a pacifist. And I remember my first playthrough, like getting all the lore and everything. I was like, why the hell was I a pacifist? And then I went through and played the game as a crazy killer. And at that point, I was like, okay, I need to find a balance. And my favorite playthrough, I remember just putting myself in Corvo's shoes and thinking, like, I need to choose the people who die and make sure they're the only ones that die. And the ones that like deserve a fate worse than death. I remember like there was one dude you could lure him downstairs and sell him to be a slave. And he was like a billionaire, or like a super rich person. But like the game was just so crazy, and the bounds that I went to like make my own story and make that story mine, I really, really loved. And the gameplay was just crazy. Like being able to just blink behind someone and be like, hey, there goes your neck, and then blink away. It was just fun.
Awesome. Which was your next one, Eric?
So my next one and number one are connected slightly. A lot of people talk about the best year of video games, and a lot of people point to like 2007 for some reason.
I have learned, if you were a big 360 kid, 2007 is your year. that's kind of like been the common thing. Like when I hear whoever says that year,
I was a 360 kid, but it depends on when you're like. I think you said you're like 3 or 4 years younger than me.
Yeah, I'm from '93, so
so 3 years. So the age that you were when the 360 was popping was the year that I was in 2004, basically. So that's where it happens. Like your favorite Halo is probably Halo 3. You were like prime age to be like pro fucking 80, like gamer.
And then yours was Halo 2 because 2004.
So 2004 best year of all time for video games for me. And there's 2 games that both launched around the same time, and I had to choose one because they both had associated like additional fees. If I wanted to play Halo 2, I needed Xbox Live. If I wanted to play World of Warcraft, I needed a sub to Warcraft. And my parents were not paying for both. So I had to pick one, and all my friends picked Halo. So I picked Halo, and I don't regret picking Halo. Halo 2 is going to be spoiler, the game I choose after this. But I always regretted not being able to play World of Warcraft. I talked about that a little bit with Destiny. But then in 2019, I think it was 2019, World of Warcraft Classic came out, which by the way, if they ever released Destiny 1 Classic, I would
lose it. I will lose it. Especially I need that Wrath of the Machine raid in my life. But
exactly. Yeah. But anyway, so World of Warcraft Classic came out, and I'm a software developer. Like that's like my job. And everybody that I work with is like super smart software developers, and typically, like in my experience anyway, software developers are really big into PC gaming. And so a lot of the people that I work with played World of Warcraft like when they were kids. They chose the other decision basically. So they were not like, they were kind of half in half out about playing the game, and I was the one that was like, no, we all have to subscribe. We got to make a clan like of all the employees at this company or a guild and just like go ham. And launching that game, trying to figure out what server to pick, like loading into like the Valley of Strength, which is like where the orcs and the trolls start, and there's just like so many people everywhere, so many funny memes generate. It's just such a vibrant community. I remember this is probably in the weeds a bit for you guys, but in the trial of in the Valley of Strength, in the orc starter zone, there's a quest where you have to go into a cave, and there's a mob that you have to kill, and he drops a burning blade necklace, and you have to bring it back, and it starts like a story chain or whatever. But he's on a spawn timer of like 2 minutes, and you only get credit for the kill if you hit him first. And it's not like Destiny where there's like 10 people phased in. There's like literally 100 people running around, and so you get in a group of 5 because that's the maximum party size. And you literally, there was like, I walked up to the cave to go where the quest was, and there's a lineup of people like coming out of the cave, and I'm just standing in line like waiting with these other players to wait my turn to kill this thing that's going to spawn. And then you just start talking to people about like how, oh, like, are you going to take tailoring? Because I could need someone to make me bags. Can I add you to my friends list and you can make me bags later, and maybe I can make you grenades because I'm going to take engineering. Like, just these types of communication that happens is like not something that happens in other games. In other games, typically you don't talk to anybody. When's the last time you did a strike with random people in Destiny and talk to them? Mostly bots. That's not the case here. I remember like organizing like giant raids of horde players to like raid into the capital city of the Alliance, which is the other faction, and like take out the king. Or like I played a hunter and a hunter has an ability called feign death where they basically pretend to be dead. And I would like pretend to be dead in the middle of the road, and a pack of Alliance would come up, and I had all these horde buddies like hiding in bushes waiting to like jump them as soon as they tried to kill me, and just like all these amazing memories. And unfortunately most of the people at my work quit the game, but I stuck with it and joined a different guild and got to max level, which took 9 days of playtime. It's such an awesome game, and that I still play it to this day. I talked about that earlier. It's one of the best games ever made, and it came out like it came out like a month away from the other best game of all time, Halo 2. So 2004 MVP.
Awesome. So my next one, this one is like a recent addition for my list, but I think it also just goes to show like I think the power of this game. Final Fantasy VI, and I had heard over many years which one's the best Final Fantasy, and a lot of people will always tell me 6. Thanks to 16 this year putting me in the mood of being able to go back to like those old games. And I got to finish the original one. I got to finish 4, which was 2 when it released in America. And I was like, I'll do how people experience it in the SNES. 1, 2, 3 were 1, 4, and 6. And with 6, I am noticing what it means in gaming to be a timeless masterpiece. That what makes those games, what makes that game so great, still holds up all these years later. Just to think that this year that I experienced it, this game that came out when I was 1 year old, because this is from 94, told a story that captivated me like as much as it did, a soundtrack that is like so beautiful, and how much it elicits emotion in like the dialogue that you read and like what it's presenting, the kind of themes that it was dealing with back in 94, like things like early teenage pregnancy, suicide, like actually seeing what actual loss is in that, like it is in that game, what happens halfway through that game, and like how it like embraces hope, like even when everything it feels like it's lost, and all of that is like parsing like the different characters and how it like in the different scenarios that you go through in that game. It's like it struck me because I was like, I can't believe I'm experiencing this game so late, but being able to like transform myself to like what this did for gaming and how it's still its power. I feel it like almost 30 years later. And like I tell you, like some of those music themes, like Terrace theme, as you're like going in the overworld, the freaking opera scene, like the opera house that was like struck around. I heard all this time about this opera scene and getting to like experience it, especially like the pixel remaster, which is how I experienced it, added like actual lyrics and seeing how those lyrics tell the personal story of one of the main characters, that near the end you feel like later in the game she's the one that almost commits suicide, and how that were like linked together. And I was like, man, this game's like heavy. This game's intense. Like I understand and I get it. And I beat it twice this year. I recently beat it again. Like I beat it in July and I beat it again because it's like it has been living. And in some of those musical motifs, I'm like humming them as I'm like living in my normal life. Like it's great. It's such a crazy game. And I'm like, everyone that hears it in the list are like, this is one of the best games of all time. This is one of the few times that I've had many times where I'm like, I don't get it. It's like maybe I kind of understand it from a certain perspective why it would hit, and then sometimes you experience it, I'm like Final Fantasy VII. That's the original one. I experienced it for the first time this year, and I got it in a way, but it was too dated, like in looks and all that. I'm like, yeah, I can see what people wouldn't get, what made this game special back then. But I feel 6, like, it's such a historical like achievement, especially for Square and for Final Fantasy, and excellent. Like, it's such an excellent game. Like, I love it so much. So,
is that the one with the clown boss?
Yes, Kefka. Yeah, Kefka. Yeah. The amazing laugh. Oh my god, he's like the greatest villain. Yeah, he's the greatest villain in Final Fantasy. It's like just a complete deranged monster. Like, he doesn't give a crap. It's like, no, I'm gonna end the world because I'm just like that evil. It's just like how thoroughly you end, like, and how that game daring to basically end halfway through and restart you over as part of kind of like the main story. And it's ironic. It's like I was talking with a friend about it. It's like in Final Fantasy VI, you see basically Breath of the Wild before Breath of the Wild, or kind of like Breath of the Wild starts you at that world of ruin point, and you know like what the end is. And that game, like Final Fantasy VI, gives you the background before like everything changes, and you have like your central point. That's the end of the game, Kefka's Tower, and how you tackle it is like up to you. If you go like explore the world, gather your forces, get in, or go in as so weak. It's like it's such a complex game that I'm like I understand now like why this is like it's considered the top. Like, I was not surprised for that one to be the one I've loved the most, as I've been like revisiting these old ones. So
I gotta try it.
So my last one is going to be a slight mention of another one, but it's also Final Fantasy. The one I'm going to talk about is Crisis Core. But my first video game ever was Final Fantasy 9, and bless my best friend from across the street who knew that my grandma would never let me own a gaming console and decided on my birthday, I'm going to give you my PS1 and I'm going to give you Final Fantasy 9. I still have both.
Awesome.
But I remember just diving into that game and I fell in love with Zidane, Dagger. I named Steiner something obscene, even as a teenager, which was kind of funny. But since I got into gaming so late, like that was my thing. And I remember I got to the last boss, discovered what was going on with VV. And, I was on the last disc, like I was ready to beat the game. And my younger brother decided he was going to override my memory card with Crash Bandicoot Racing. So I never got to finish it.
Oh, no.
And that is the only time I savagely beat my brother to the point that my parents had to break it up. But
losing those saves in those long games is like, I understand that pain real well. So
that leads, like, the next time I reapproached Final Fantasy was Crisis Core, when I had a summer job and I bought myself a PSP and I was like, I'm gonna give this a try because it looks cool. And then meeting Zack and being like, hey, my name's Zack too, like it was very interesting for me to like dive into this universe and learn about Sephiroth and Cloud from Crisis Core, because I never played 7 at that point. And then making it to the end, I remember I just spent so much time playing it. Like, I'd sit at the library and just play it for hours on end with my little PSP headphones. And I remember, especially at the end, we all know how it ends, right?
The price of freedom is steep, Zach.
Yeah, I remember I did not like that ending. And I remember I went back to a further save and I grinded to max level. And I remember I was just at that end scene just going on forever. And I just remember being like, let me win. And I couldn't, but that led me to playing 7, and I adore that franchise now. Yeah,
one of the most powerful endings. A little emotionally manipulative, like with the FMB song at the end and all that, but it really hits. It's funny, like, I experienced Crisis Core for the first time with Reunion on this past December. That was my second review over at Season Gaming. That's how I got to experience it, and that hit. That ending really hits.
I think my biggest criticism of Remake and Reunion, because I just bought Reunion on Steam. I haven't started it yet.
That would be Reunion, yeah. Sorry.
But is Zack's voice. And that's just because I spent so much time with Crisis Core. Like, his voice has such a unique tone for me. Like, whenever I think of Zack, I think of, stoic Zack. And when I heard that new voice, I was like, That isn't my boy.
Yeah.
No.
My buddy Paul, he said the exact same thing, and I was like, man, I'm glad I knew of Crisis Core and I didn't play the PSP version, because when I played it just on the PS5, I didn't. I liked him, but I always keep hearing that. I'm like, yeah, I'm glad that I live in ignorance, so that it doesn't bother me. So, yeah, Crisis Core, and now your final game, Halo 2, right, Eric?
Yeah. So Halo 2, best game of all time. I'll tell you why. So I when I got my original Xbox, which is kind of a story in and of itself, I did like get Halo. Like I rented it from Blockbuster, Halo Combat Evolved, and I beat the campaign, and me and my friend played a little bit of split screen, and I thought it was like awesome. But I actually kind of like Jet Set Radio Future a little bit more. I like Blood Omen 2 a little bit more. I was also like 11, so like I wasn't super smart. Halo's way better than those games. But then I was going into I just had finished my first year of high school, and I lived in like the middle of Canada, and my family was moving to like the east coast of Canada. So I was uprooting from high school, leaving all of my friends and moving to a new province on the completely like eastern side of the country, like 2,000 kilometers away. Was probably never going to see these people again. It's kind of shitty. I had one friend in where I am now, which was my cousin, and he had a friend, and his friend's dad played Halo with his buddies. They had system links, and in his basement with like 4 Xboxes and Halo, and it was kind of like 3 layers. It was like the dads, and then the older brothers, and then like my friends, like we were the youngest ones, and this playing a system link for the first time was the best experience of my life at that point, gaming wise. It was just like, this was like before Xbox Live kind of like super took off, and this was like insanely awesome, especially because like the grown-ups were like raging and smashing controllers, and it was like so fun. And this was like right leading up to like when Halo 2 came out, so I had never been more hyped for a video game in my life. Like it was on, and Halo 2 when it came out, it was crazy, because I don't know if you might not have been old enough at that point to kind of get the perspective of it, but it was the biggest game that had ever released. And also there wasn't like a ton of other games. Like it's not like today where like Call of Duty comes out, but so does like The Witcher and Final Fantasy and this game and that game. And there's like so much.
Yeah, it was like a big event. I've seen this. I've seen like the historical like documentation of like Halo 2, like how big that launch was. Like being covered in the news and things like that.
Exactly. So not only was it a huge launch, but it was like not a common occurrence for a huge launch like this to happen. And I was asking for the game at launch. It came out on November 9th, and my parents were like, no, you have to get it, like wait till Christmas, like Christmas around the corner, yada yada. And then when they saw the news that night at launch and saw like why I wanted it so bad, like it was the only time in my life where my dad took me to the store the next day and just got a game at launch for no reason. It wasn't like a birthday or Christmas or something like that. And that has never happened again. And it was pretty awesome. But Halo 2 would become like my life. Like it wasn't like a game on my Xbox. Like it was my Xbox. If I wanted to see what my friends were doing, I loaded up Halo 2 and looked at my friends list. I never used the dashboard. Like Halo 2 was my Xbox's dashboard. If I rented a game from Blockbuster and wanted to play it, I would play Halo 2 first just to check my friends list to see what my friends are doing. And then I'd play the game I just rented from Blockbuster. It was like insane. And just to tell a quick funny story about Halo 2, I had mentioned that there was like those 3 layers, like there was the dads and then the older brothers, and because like they were all like my friends in the Halo group, that's how it functioned. And they had a clan where the older brothers were like, they were the best players, and they were the only ones that were really like allowed to play clan matches, because when you played clan matches in Halo 2, if you won, your rank went up, if you lost, your rank went down. And they were way better than everybody, so they were the ones that played the clan matches, and we were just in the clan like out of the kindness of their hearts. And me and my friends were like, we're pretty good. Like we played a little bit. Like I think we could just play one clan match, just one, and we won't tell anybody. And we played and we got destroyed, like 49 to like 3 or something like that. Damn. On Foundation. And one thing that was kind of ahead of its time with Halo 2 is on Bungie.net, it would track all the stats, all the matches, all the post-game reports.
Those are all gone, right? or did they like get transferred over to like somewhere else?
I think like there's some data that's still transferred, like how many matches you played, but not like the box scores or anything like that. But those older brothers would check it every day to see what they did or what they played, and then they'd be like, wait, what's this clan match? And they could see who played it and like who was in it, and they immediately kicked all the little brothers out of the clan and all the dads out of the clan. And I was at my friend's house like when this happened, and his dad just like burst into the room. He's like, well, I'm not in the clan anymore. Are you guys in the clan? Quick check. And we're like, no, we're not in the clan anymore. Like, what's happening? And we all had to like go to the kitchen. I remember his dad's on the phone with the other dads like, are you in the clan? What's going on with this clan? So this is like college students, grade 10 kids, and like 40-50-year-old men all like raging about a Halo 2 clan. Like, this doesn't happen anymore. Like at this point in time, everybody has their own games that they play, and everybody's kind of split up. But the community that was like involved in Halo 2, and by the way, we created a new clan that was like the same name but juniors, and eventually after no lifing Halo for a year, we got to a higher rank than the kids who they had no idea there was a competition happening. But we did, and we ended up coming back and getting a higher rank than them. But yeah, dude, Halo was just like, there has not been a game that has ever taken over my life like that, and there never will, because I don't have time anymore. But yeah, best game of all time.
Halo. I was gonna say like Halo 1 will always hold like a very special place in my heart, because I would always be like, hey, I'm going across the street to my best friend's house, and we would play Halo for hours. And I remember when Halo 2 came out, I never got to experience Xbox Live multiplayer until the 360 era with Halo 3, but I'll never forget the hairs on my arm standing up in that first mission from Halo 2 of just hearing Katana say, you know, what if you miss? Master Chief saying, I won't, you know. And like the original trilogy and Reach will always hold a very special place in my heart, because that, just like you were saying with Halo 2, like that was where I went to be social, even though like for the first two games it was just split screen. Like it would just be me and my best friend and my dad, or my little brother sometimes, or me and my best friend bullying the crap out of my dad on Prisoner. But those games are just so special, and they were my first FPS. I mean,
it was like, that was before Facebook too, before Twitter. So that was like the social network for me. And like I went from leaving all of my friends, moving and having no friends. On the first day of high school in my new home, I had like 15 friends from Halo, and like then their friends got it, and it was just like, it was never a problem. Instant friends in real life, as well as obviously online. And like some of those people are still like some of my best friends to this day, and it's all from Halo. Like those dads, those older brothers, I'm still friends with all of them. I'm in a fantasy football league with all the older brothers still to this day. Now that was started in 2004, and it's all because of Halo. If there was no Halo, they wouldn't have been my friends. I would never have met them.
Man, it's like the Halo hype only hit here until 3, because like the PS2 was such a dominant force here in El Salvador that I had a few friends that did have Xbox. I had a friend called Ever. He was a big Halo fan. He always kept telling me about this Halo 2 thing. Told me about like this weird story, like how it switched characters and all this. I kept hearing about it, but that was a kid. My dad was the one buying, even though I had an Xbox. It was still like at the mercy of like kind of what I said, that if it looked interesting to my dad, he would buy it. We went to the store one time. I showed him, hey, look at that Halo 2. And then he saw GoldenEye Rogue Agent was next to him. He was like, I like GoldenEye, I'm gonna buy that. And I'm like, don't you see this like masterpiece there in front of the box? So it was like, I had to like deal with that. So it was like that the Halo 2 hype just wasn't here, but the mystique grew to the point that Halo 3 was the time that in the transition, I had a lot of friends that did get 360s early on, because they had heard how big Halo 2 was, and Halo 3 was kind of like maybe not as huge, but also had similar hype going into it, finished the fight and all of that. So that's kind of where I got in, even though I had rented Halo 2 like after hearing so much about it. But Halo 3 was like the ground floor of like being able to like experience the multiplayer, things like that. So yeah, it's like when I hear that, I'm like, man, I wish I had seen that side, guys. Like, because I keep hearing it, because that was not only that, like when you think about it, that was at the beginning of that kind of console multiplayer social experience. Like what happened with that game? It was like again, like Bungie trendsetters. Like they were trendsetters back then, and and for people that love it or hate it, also Destiny. So yeah, Halo's really special. Like I wish I like Infinite more than I do, but
try it now. It's so good now.
Yeah, I tried season 3. I haven't tried season 4. So yeah, but I was like hoping that it would like enlist, because I remember the hype at launch and back in 2021. So, and then like my final game, I have to give it to Super Mario World. But this is more just beyond just Super Mario World, but kind of like Mario in general. Mario is my family's franchise. Kind of is the one game where we all convene every time a new entry comes out. Like Mario World was my first ever video game. I played it when I was 1 year old. My mom has a picture of me holding the SNES controller playing Mario World. It's a game that I know like to the back of my hand, like to the back of my mind, every single level, every single secret. I do yearly speed runs in front of my mom, being like, okay, let's see how fast we can get through this. And there's just something about how special and timeless Super Mario World is, like how perfect it is as a platformer, and its little nuances, how like either short or long you can make it based on like knowing like the different ways that you can go through like its overworld map, knowing some of the secrets to maximize your lives, or finding the different Yoshis and all of the Star World, and just knowing that like Mario is always the thing that no matter like how old we've gotten, like every time that a new Mario game has come in and I'm with my family, we gather together. It happened with Mario 64. In fact, Mario 64 is like my first memory of me crying on a video game. For some reason, I cried when they were saying goodbye, and I just got tearied up. It is so funny. There's something about like I have a very reaction to music, because even now when I play Mario 64 and I hear that song, I get kind of like teary eyed out of a sudden. So it's kind of like I have a very like when music, like it's so specific, it can like really elicit emotions in me. Like the Dom Delfino Island song from Mario Sunshine, also like that my mom absolutely hates. It's so funny. She loves Mario, but she hates Sunshine. But because it's Mario, like it's always together, and she loves watching me play and see how fast I go through that, all the way until Odyssey, which with Odyssey, she was in love of Mariachi Mario. She was like, and seeing like finding the cuteness of what Mario is, and knowing that that's always like the game that I can always like share with my parents, even as I become more insular and when I game, because obviously they're not gonna get when I'm like ripping up Alien in half or something like that. Yeah. And I always trace that all the way to Mario World, like my first ever video game, and thinking how that Mario franchise just stands strong, like no matter when it happens. It's like something that is always gonna bring like a smile to my dad, to my mom, even like my sister, that sometimes plays, sometimes not, but we always have that common sharing when it comes to video games with Mario. So Mario World, the best. So and with that game. And with that, Jens, you've heard the 25 favorite games and 5 special games from members of Season Gaming. It's and that concludes like my time with you guys, so that I don't like keep holding, because we're recording really late. So Zach, where can people find you?
You guys can find me on Twitter, American Psycho. I think it's spelled a little differently because someone still has the original app, unfortunately. But if you just type in Season Gaming and look at some of the reviews, it like we talked about earlier, Ains always tags me. I'm kind of the odd one to find. I probably should rebrand. I got that name when I used to stream, and I don't really stream anymore. So
yeah. It's always a struggle. Yeah. I feel you. Like I'm like, I'm gonna go back because I have an Elgato, and I had like my Twitch account. I'm like, yeah. So,
but yeah, Eric, just really Twitter.
Yeah. And Eric, where can people find you?
I hang out on Twitter mostly. You can find me at GamePositiveYT on Twitter. I do have a YouTube channel and a podcast that it's been on hiatus. There's been some crazy stuff happening in my personal life this year, but I'm hoping to get that back online soonish. So maybe there'll be some new content there eventually if you wanted to check it out. But it's Game Positive YT on YouTube as well. It's Game Positive everywhere, basically, Instagram, whatever. Twitter's where I usually hang out, though. And on seasongaming.com. Join the Discord, by the way.
Yeah, everyone's always chatting there. I tend to like, I get overwhelmed with trying to like stay, because I'm in so many Discords. I just lurk. I try to be like, okay, what are people chatting here? But yeah, the Season Gaming Discord is like very, very, very active, especially its open gaming chat. So it's fun stuff. And hey, this was fun. Like, hopefully I can get you guys in sometimes in the future. Maybe at like a different, like a different time. Like maybe for game specific discussions. Who knows? Like this has been like such a weird, like such a crazy year for games that are so ripe for that. I did like many I did like a Jedi Survivor and a Final Fantasy 16 spoiler cast earlier this year with my buddy Paul, and I would love to do that kind of content even with more people. So yeah, hopefully I can get you guys more in now that I've seen you like in face. Other than I've only heard and of Steve and Ains because I've seen them in videos before. So good to put more faces in and voices.
Yeah,
For sure. Same,
my voice
same.
will be a lot better next time, I promise.
Yeah. Hey,
Same.
your voice sounded great considering like the warning. So
Yeah.
And with that, we're going back to the regular scheduled programming. Well, and that brings us to the conclusion of what was originally going to be the segment for episode 39, and now it's going to be like its own special episode. If you listen to the entire episode, I thank you so much. Hopefully I can bring back Zack and Eric sometime soon, and I can bring in also more people from Season Gaming, like my EIC Ains, and also our other senior writers like Steve Esposito, who was supposed to be in this episode, but unfortunately he couldn't, but he definitely wants to be in the future. So yeah, I'm looking forward for future video collaborations with some of my buddies over there at Season Gaming. So yeah, you can find me at _Segovia on Twitter and /X. You can find also some of my posts on Instagram /threads at Alejandro Segovia 93. And then you can also find my written content, as mentioned, currently at seasongaming.com, and some of my old content at thecriticalcorner.com. I want to thank you so much for your ongoing listenership and support. I appreciate you so much. And I'll see you until episode 40 next week, which might be either the special guest episode with Travis Northup or just another one with Paul. Whichever one it is, you'll tune in, same at the same bat time, same bat channel, and enjoy the games that I've been playing. Go touch some grass and press X to play. Hasta la vista, baby.